Welcome to Inside Scoop Live. Hi, I'm Irene Watson. I'm your host for today. Today we have a very interesting program, one that we all should be very aware of. It involves children and how they become victims. I'm speaking on the phone with Deborah K.Frontiera. She has recently written a book titled Fight C.P.S. Guilty Until Proven Innocent of Child Protective Services Charges. This book chronicles 13 months of agony and frustration suffered by the innocent Bonilla and Frontiera families as a result of Child Protective Services removal of young James Bonilla from his parents. We're going to hear from Deborah, grandmother of James, of what really happened and how the system failed. Hi, Deborah.
Hi, Irene. How are you today?
I'm doing good. I'm so glad to have you online, and this is such an important topic. But before we go any further, fighting CPS, guilty until proven innocent of Child Protective Services charges. Tell our listening audience just sort of a brief outline of what this book is really about.
It's about, mainly about my family when my daughter and son-in-law were accused of abusing their son, who was not quite 2 years old at that time. And the following 13 months that we spent trying to prove that they were innocent and trying to show the agency that our son-in-law or our grandson had a medical problem. He was not being abused. And then it grew beyond that to include 10 other cases that I came to know about that where other people were also wrongfully accused. And I began to realize the scope of the problem, and I decided that the book needed to be much more than look what happened to our family, but look what happens to a lot of families, and that there's so much incompetence all through the system, and not just in the state of Texas, but across the country.
Now, you said that your daughter and son-in-law were wrongly accused. Who actually reported or accused, or how did this all start in the first place that CPS would get a red flag?
Our grandson began having seizures in February of 2007. And in the course of diagnosing why he was having seizures and what type of medication, et cetera, to put him on, he had an MRI done at Texas Children's Hospital. And the MRI showed that there were some head injuries, which we had been completely unaware of. He had never cried, never lost consciousness, never had any symptoms that indicated a concussion or anything of the sort. CPS came to the conclusion that the head injury was caused by abuse and that the head injury was causing the seizures. When the seizures had happened first, and it could be that, you know, he had hit his head on his crib in the night having a seizure and nobody even knew about it. We may never know where the injury came from. So, yes, they did have some cause to be suspicious because a child with a head injury is something they need to look into. But the doctor involved immediately came to the conclusion that that kind of a head injury could only be caused by abuse and did not look any farther into it and just immediately concluded that these people were abusing their child and filed affidavits with CPS and with the court.
Oh, my goodness. I'm just sitting here with you can't see me, of course, because this is recorded and we're on the phone, but I'm sitting here with my mouth dropped because our own child had a seizure when he was 8 years old. At that time, we didn't have MRIs. He's in his early 40s now. But he had all kinds of tests done, and they came to the conclusion that there was a lesion on his brain. But, you know, who knows? A little child runs, falls. I mean, kids are kids. They fall. Or it could have been from birth.
Right. And, of course, our grandson also had the problem of he was a very tall child, always for his age, and he tended to run a lot and lean forward. So he fell down and collected bruises on his forehead like ants collecting, sugar crystals at a picnic. And so when my daughter-in-law and son-in-law were question, of course it came out, well, how does he get all these bruises? Well, he falls down a lot. Well, that excuse among parents who do abuse their children is about as common as my dog ate the homework to a teacher. So there were just a lot of circumstances that fell together at that time that made them suspicious. But the problem was they never really investigated. I even took the results of a CT scan that he had done after the second seizure, which showed not a head injury, nothing at all, nothing in his whole little brain but a little sinusitis, which definitely proved that the seizures preceded the head injury. And they never really took that medical evidence seriously.
So I can just imagine being a parent, because I'm thinking, just relating to my own son and, having the seizure. And, of course, it's the first time this happens. This is panic. We get medication. We get all kinds of tests done. And, I can just imagine your family going through this, the mother and the father, your daughter. And so this must have been just this devastating surprise when they came to the door, wanting to take these children away, or the child.
Right, and actually it happened all in the course of being in the hospital. After he had the MRI, they recalled them to the hospital under the guise that something showed up. Well, my daughter and son-in-law were in panic mode. They thought, oh, my gosh, what if he's got a brain tumor, what if this, what if that? And they're driving in the middle of rush hour traffic in Houston, trying to get back after being told to go to the emergency room, and then get there and wait for hours and hours, not being told anything, while behind the scenes they're preparing to take this child away with no explanation to the parents. When the caseworker actually told them, we're taking your child away, in some ways my daughter said it was a relief, because I thought, oh, he hasn't got cancer.
Right, of course.
But then that, of course, unleashed a whole other nightmare that lasted for 13 months.
13 months?
13 months, yep. It was almost as if the numbers were there. We had 13 months and 13 different caseworkers.
No way.
Every time we would get ready to go to court, we would be informed that we had changed caseworkers. Sometimes we would get to a court hearing and find out we had a different caseworker who would then stand in front of the judge and say, well, I just got this case a couple of days ago, Judge. I really haven't had time to look at the file. And the judge would automatically grant another extension.
So in the meantime, this child was in a foster home, obviously.
Actually, he was with us. They did place him with my husband and I in what they call kinship care. They do in Texas. They do like to put a child with a family member if they can, because for one thing, it saves them all the charges all the cost that they'd have to pay to a foster family, because in kinship care you don't get anything. Except a lot of headaches and expenses. But he was with us, and at the very beginning, the judge had set fairly liberal visitation rights. Our daughter and son-in-law could be at our house as often and as long as we wanted, but they could not stay overnight.
Oh.
And so, our daughter and son-in-law were here pretty much nonstop.
I can well imagine.
And that was a stressor, too, in a lot of ways, because they weren't getting things done at their house that they needed to do. My husband and I, we felt like we had company all the time, even though they were family. And even that tends to build stress. And every night, James would just cry and cry and cry, because his parents had to leave him with us, and he wasn't going home, and he didn't understand. And, there was no way to explain it to him.
Well, no, especially a child at that age. Well, any child, really. Or try to explain this to an adult, let alone a 2-year-old child. My goodness. So, now, where is all this now? How old is James right now?
James is now 6 years old.